Ekabo.
Oh.
We have just greeted you with the Yoruba greeting for welcome. Ekabo. Ekabo.
Oh.
We have just greeted you with the Yoruba greeting for welcome. Ekabo. And we've also got a response. Oh. We are welcoming you here to a series of programs, broadcasts of the programs that are related to an exhibition at the Elvehjem Museum of Art entitled Beads, Body and Soul, Art and Light in the Yoruba Universe. My name is Henry Drewal. I'm Elvehjem Professor of Art History and Afro-American Studies at the University of Wisconsin here at Madison. And I'm the co-curator, along with John Mason, of this exhibition that will be at the Elvehjem until May 21st.
I'm Sonya Clark. I'm a professor of environment, textiles, and design, a bead artist. So very excited that this show is here with us and helping in every way that I can with the external programming related to the show.
And what we wanted to do this evening is to introduce you briefly to the content of the exhibition and some of the central themes. And then we'll be showing you excerpts from a variety of events that happened this past weekend, that is the 28th, 29th, and 30th of January, as part of the grand opening of this exhibition. Beads, Body and Soul is a show of about 150 beaded art objects from the Yoruba-speaking peoples of West Africa and their descendants in the diaspora, in the Americas. More specifically from the United States, coming out of Cuban beading traditions, as well as some beadworks from Yoruba descendants in Brazil. It's an exhibition that shows the diversity, the antiquity, and the richness of Yoruba beading tradition.
The co-curators of this exhibition, Henry Drewal, who you've met earlier, and John Mason, both gave wonderful presentations about Yoruba beadwork. Henry Drewal spoke on color and cosmos. He gave us an overview of the way that color is used among the Yoruba. John Mason talked about the use of beads, their symbolic use, their conceptual use of beads. Not only the physical objects themselves, but beads, that dotting and patterning that you find in cloth, on leopards, in patterning. These two wise men, both with their gray hair, are well represented by this altar that we have here of Obatala, who is known to be a wise and cool Orisha or deity.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Elvehjem Museum of Art. I'm Ann Lambert. I'm the curator of education here. And it's a pleasure to have you here on this opening weekend of Beads, Body and Soul, Art and Light in the Yoruba Universe. And a joyful weekend it has been. I urge you to take a program brochure before you leave today so that you can take advantage of the dozens of programs that have been planned. It's impossible to thank everyone who's been involved in advice, support, and funding of these programs, but it's detailed in the brochure. In particular, though, I want to call your attention to another exhibition, related exhibition that opened this weekend. It's Joyful Blues, Patterns in Yoruba Adire Cloth at the Gallery of Design. Is Sonya here to tell us the hours? It's open this afternoon, and please take advantage of that. It's on view until March the 9th. Sonya, what are the hours this afternoon of the Gallery of Design? All right. 1. All right. Thank you. 1 to 4 this afternoon, and Tuesday to Friday, 11 to 4. Also, this week will be a film series, a Yoruba film series, and it will be Thursday at 5:30 in this room, and there'll be a couple of short films and 3 longer films. And I also want to call your attention to a lecture by Robert Ferris Thompson on February 10th, another Thursday at 5:30 in this space. The galleries are open upstairs every Thursday until 8 o'clock, especially for this exhibition. It's a great pleasure to have both the co-curators for the exhibition to speak to us today, John Mason and Henry Drewal. And I'm going to turn the podium over to Henry Drewal. He's the Elvehjem Professor of Art History and Afro-American Studies here at the University of Wisconsin. Thank you, Henry.
A couple. Oh. Good. The numbers are growing. And, you know, I'm not going to just leave it at welcome. You have to learn the next lesson, especially since the director of the National African Language Center is here in the audience, Yetunde, who is the expert in Yoruba language here on the campus. So after I've greeted you, now I want to ask you, how are you? I hope things are fine. I hope peace is with you. She alafia ni. And then you respond to me, Adupe, we give thanks for health and prosperity. She alafia ni. All right, we have begun well. Thank you. I'm so glad you could all be here this afternoon. We've got a lot to get through, so I'm just going to begin with the subject of my talk, give you some introductory remarks first, and then we'll move to some slides, if the time is going well, to maybe a little bit of video, short video as well. And then I'm going to speak first, and then John will follow me after that. Today what I intend to do is to take you on a journey. The Yoruba metaphor, one of the Yoruba metaphors for life is that life is a journey. Life is a journey. When the Yorubas say that, they're emphasizing the fact that, you know, we always have to try to keep in mind all of those decisions that we have to make along our path. All of the difficult times, all of those hard decisions, and we want to use as much guidance as we can to make the right decisions at the right moments in our life. To also know that in the Yoruba view that life in this world is transitory, it's brief, and that we need to make the most of our short time here. And the Yoruba have a saying, Aye loja orumile. This world is a marketplace that we come and visit. We come to this world to do our business. And when we're finished with our business here, we go home to the afterlife and the other world. But that's not the end of the story, because the Yoruba also believe in reincarnation. That if we make positive contributions the first time around, or one of those times around, we have the chance of coming back again. So it's a journey that we're going to take this afternoon. This is a shorter journey. It's essentially from the entrance to the exhibition through the African section of the exhibition, because I wanted to give you a kind of roadmap for what you will see in the exhibition. So I'm going to talk about how I conceived and structured that part of the exhibition, and how the objects are grouped according to purpose and significance in Yoruba culture. And then John, in his discussion, is going to talk about, you know, many of the themes that are expressed in the beadwork of Yoruba, the Yoruba artistic, beading artistic tradition as it continues in the Americas. So let's see. And then at the very end, I'm going to not make a conclusion, but give you an au revoir. That is a new beginning, a new start. But before I begin, I want to read you a poem. And maybe it's better knowing how the senses affect how we understand things in this world. Let me ask you to close your eyes and just listen to these words and create mental images from the verbal images that I'm about to say to you, okay? Everybody got their eyes closed? No peeking. All right. This is actually from the Ifa divination literature, which talks about everything. This is the tradition of divination, vast oral literature that speaks about all issues in the world and the other world. And this is about beads. The head that wears a crown of riches emerges from a shining brass colander. The head that has chosen a good destiny. The neck that wears a double necklace of beads like okun beads. Yes, emerges from a shining brass colander. Yes, beads of the waist wear a fine garment, a royal robe that glitters brightly. Yes, it emerges from a shining brass colander, has indeed chosen a good destiny. Okay, you can open your eyes now. This is from Oyekumeji, one of the chapters in Ifa divination literature. I think the next thing I want to point out is how the Yorubas regard beads, and I think the best way to explain that is, again, to go back to Yoruba metaphorical and proverbial knowledge, because more than anything, beads connote prosperity, auspiciousness, good fortune, high value, purity in the sense of the best that one can be. A bead is the best it can be. And the Yoruba, in understanding those qualities and having those ideas about beads, equate them with their most precious possession, that is children. And they say, "Ileke lomo." Beads are children, and children are beads. They are precious to us. We need to take care of them, never let them fall, and show them well to the world, just like beads. So I think that saying captures it for me, that centrality and that importance of beads in Yoruba thought as they equate them with their own living children. All right, now we can begin with the slides, and I guess I'll bring the lights down from here. We get to that. And let's have this podium light off. All right, I want this to go off. Okay, good. Thank you. There it goes. Thanks. All right, let's have the first two slides, and then I'll advance the, well, maybe I just go ahead and do it, huh? Oh, I've pressed for you as well. Okay, here we are. All right, what I'm going to begin with in my discussion is, as you look at these maso necklaces, doubled. They are fortune, so I wanted to put up double fortune on the screen. These are the America's version of sacred ritual necklaces that are worn at the time of initiation into the faith, into Orisha belief in the Americas. And they relate very closely to multi-stranded necklaces that you're going to see from Africa. They come out of that tradition and combine others along with it. Let's move right to this, because I wanted you to see a river. The Yoruba have another metaphor. They have a metaphor about speaking about their culture. And they say that Yoruba culture is like a river that never rests. A river that never rests. And here you're looking at the sacred Oshun River from Yoruba land, a place that is said to be protected and guided by the goddess of sweet water, Oshun. And when the Yoruba use that metaphor for their culture, they're saying that they're talking and emphasizing the dynamic qualities of culture. They understand that change is inevitable. They also understand that some parts of a river move slowly and change little, probably what would be considered the deep parts of the river. And those parts that are slow to change are seen by the Yoruba as foundations. things that are deep within the roots of Yoruba culture. And so there are lots of key concepts, central, fundamental concepts that are really basically unchanging. But within those concepts is the idea of the dynamic and being able to adapt to constant change in the world. Because they also understand that other parts of the river may run rapidly, swirl and change direction quickly. And they understand that some parts of a culture, if it's to live, must be able to do that as well. So I think this metaphor of the river that never rests is a really wonderful one for the Yoruba, and especially for their artistic traditions. Because we're going to be moving from an ancient tradition of bronze casting and brass casting and terracotta sculpture like this Ife priest king figure that dates to probably about 12 or 1300 AD, found at the sacred city of Ile-Ife. And it's a wonderful, wonderful image to represent the antiquity of the beading tradition, because in that same city of Ile-Ife we have found an extensive glass working industry that was producing glass beads and other objects of brass from probably about 800 AD, and a stone bead working industry as well. And represented in this bronze figure is a stone, probably stone beaded crown, but also necklaces, multiple strands of necklaces and pendants around the neck and around the chest and around the ankles and around the arms and wrists. Notice that the Yoruba body is encircled at points of articulation, at points of action, literally points of action. And this is an expression because it's an elevation and an embellishment of a key idea and concept, one of these deep philosophical concepts that I'm talking about at the bottom of this sacred river. And that is the concept of Ashe, Ashe, which is life force, vital force. But more than that, or in addition to it, I think we need to understand Ashe as performative power. It is that which makes things happen. It makes things possible. And we are responsible for building our knowledge and our wisdom to use Ashe for the benefit of ourselves, our family, and our communities. We all possess Ashe. We all have that potential. And we need to use it to the best of our ability in the short time that we're here. So Ashe is one of these key concepts. And as you look at these beaded objects, which are wonderful visual statements of color and of form and of image, know that those beads and those objects possess their own Ashe. And that's what makes them important to Yoruba. It's not either or, it's all at the same time. Here is Yoruba land on the left, so you know where you are in the world. We are in the Yoruba universe of West Africa. I mean, the Yoruba universe extends to Madison, Wisconsin, and Milwaukee, and Chicago, and so on. But John will talk about that. I'm just going to talk about the African part of it. Here we are on that part of West African coast, and this is Yoruba land, southwestern Nigeria and eastern Benin. And you're seeing the names of the various Yoruba subgroups. So we often write in the literature Yoruba-speaking peoples because they are not a unitary and a unified people. They identify with ancient kingdoms and queendoms of the past, like Oyo, and the deified king of Oyo, Shango, who I'll be talking about later on, and the Ijebu, the sons of 16 chameleons, and so on and so forth. So this is Yoruba land. Two key points about Yoruba history and why the Yoruba are important. One is that they number more than 25 million people today. They are a large and a prominent and a very important cultural group on the West African landscape and now on the global landscape. And the descendants of Yoruba peoples who came against their will from the end of the 18th century and into up until almost the latter part of the 19th century came to the Americas are countless. We don't know how many Yoruba descendants there are in this world, so they're numerous there. And the Yoruba have been called by many scholars of African art the most prolific of art producers. And when you see the numbers of twin memorial figures in collections around the globe, you say, yeah, maybe the case. You're going to always find wonderful examples of Yoruba art in collections, in museums, and in galleries, and so on. Another key thing about the Yoruba is that they have a tradition of urbanism. They have been for a very long time an urban people. Yorubas love to live with other Yorubas. They don't like to live, isolated in the landscape, but rather with large conglomerations of people. So that the largest cities in Black Africa today are Yoruba cities, and they have been for a long time. And I think that urbanism is one of the things that helps us to understand the dynamism and the richness and the longevity of Yoruba artistic traditions. Now, on the left, and I hope you can read it, the type is a little bit small, but this is the chart from the exhibition catalog of the Yoruba Cosmos, and I want to go through this fairly quickly. The Yoruba Cosmos consists of the other world, Orun, and this world that we are in, Aye. They are separate realms, but they interpenetrate, as you can see by these arrows going up and down. That is, spiritual forces like the gods, Orisha, who are deified ancestors, and the spirits of other ancestors, as well as spirits who inhabit sacred spaces, can come and join us in the world. That happens during particular ceremonies when they manifest in the bodies of their followers during what we would call altered states of consciousness or trance possession. And we therefore unite with them, okay? So those are the spiritual forces. And the first section of the exhibit deals with the beaded arts in honor of the Orisha, the gods. Then the next section, further along, deals with ancestors who are materialized or visualized in the form of elaborate masquerades known as egungun. Now here in the world are we, and we're either not too wise or we're wise. Hopefully we make it to this level, and we work hard to do that. And Yoruba culture is traditionally a gerontocracy. That is, it is essentially governed and ruled and led by elders. Because in Yoruba thinking, and I would have to agree with this, you don't get to be old if you're stupid. You make a mistake and you walk off, you take a long walk on a short pier and that's it. You leave this world. So you don't make it if you're stupid. But if you're wise and you use your knowledge and you build up your ashe, then you get to be a king or a queen or an Oshugo elder or a chief or priests and priestesses or diviners and herbalists. I'm going to show you some of the bead art from them, and also masqueraders. Those who mask as the spirits of ancestors. Those are the ones I'll show you today, and those are the ones that are in the exhibition. Okay? And here are the folks, those lonely folks who don't know a whole lot, but are working hard to get up there. All right, so that's the cosmos very briefly. And I think it's important for you to understand that. And it's these individuals, as the chart says, these are the ones who get to own and to use and to commission and to wear beads in profusion, because those beads express their connection with those spiritual forces, the fact that they can transcend this threshold between world and other world. And those beads are their sign of authority and their initiation and their knowledge to be able to do that and to do it safely and well. Now, what the hell is this shell doing over here? Okay, well, I didn't make a mistake. It's not from another geology lecture that I gave somewhere else. But it was to visualize for you the notion of the spiral of life, because this is not a closed system. I've already said that we can come into the world and we build up our ashe and we leave this world for the other world, but we have the possibility of coming back into the world again, to be reborn. And so it's a spiral of life, it's a spiral of spirit, it's a spiral of ashe. Now, we begin with the sacred arts, the religious arts. And what you're looking at are young initiates, a young woman and her child, who at a particular point in their initiation have their heads shaved and painted. They are painted white. The whiteness is a sign, and the color cognition of the Yoruba is a very important, a very deep, and a very complex one. But white is a color of purity. It's also, in this case, a color of renewal, of new life, of starting again. And that's what these individuals are about to do, as their heads become dedicated to the spiritual guardian or guardians that are going to help them make right decisions during their lives. So those colors and those patterns are symbolic of particular divinities, particular Orisha, those deified ancestors. One etymology, one explanation or theory of the etymology of that word Orisha is selected head. Ori is the Yoruba word for head, a very important concept in Yoruba thinking. So Orisha, selected heads. These are the individuals who distinguish themselves during their lifetimes to such a degree that after their departure, they become idealized, they become divinized, they become something greater than what they were when they were in this world, and they begin to have followers. So these are now young initiates to the Orisha, to the deified ancestors, for different ones. And you're going to see different colors and different patterns, and I'll talk about the colors in a little while. But also you see these dots that are being placed on the head. These dots in the tradition of a kind of what I would call sacred pointillism in the Yoruba world. These are points of power and of transcendence. And they also are like Yorubas look up at the firmament, and stars are said to be the evidence of past souls who are in this world. And a falling star is one, that's a sign that one of those souls is coming back into the world. So those points of light of stars are equated with beads. Beads on the surface, and here they're painting beads on the surface of the head of this young initiate. Another connection and importance and centrality of beads. All right, we begin with some of the sacred objects in honor of the Orisha. And I always start with Eshu Elegba, Eshu Lalu Kiyoko. Because Eshu Elegba is at the crossroads. He's at this threshold between world and other world. And he, she, because I guess the best way to explain Eshu Elegba is to say that this sacred principle is the principle of uncertainty. The principle of uncertainty in our lives. Just when you think you got the answer, Eshu Elegba comes along and reminds you that maybe you don't. Maybe you better think again. And so Eshu is always invoked before any communications, any prayers, or any offerings are given to the other Orisha in the pantheon. And so I always invoke Eshu Elegba first to make sure that the projectors don't conk out and I fall off the stage and the mic goes off and so on. So here are two works in honor of Eshu Elegba. And Eshu Elegba is also a presence at crossroads. He, she is seen as the guardian of crossroads. And it's at crossroads that Yorubas make their markets, in the centers of towns and cities. And so the marketplace is referenced in these cowrie shells that have been strung like beads on these two works in honor of Eshu Elegba. Because cowries were a traditional form of currency all throughout West and Central Africa for many centuries. And so we see the marketplace, we see the exchange of ideas. We also see the marketplace as a place of contradiction, of debate, of discussion, of conflict. Hey, you shortchanged me. No, I didn't. I gave you the right, you shortchanged me, and so on. And that fight is the kind of thing that Eshu Elegba likes to, create in our lives, shake us up. But Eshu Elegba also has royal references. One of his praises is Eshu Alaketu. And so we see a beaded crown here, not unlike the conical beaded crowns that you're going to see in the exhibition, with a beaded bird at the very top. And this long hair piece that comes down, this pigtail that comes down at the back of the head, is often said to be, that hair that links Eshu between world and other world. So here are two sacred objects. These are objects that serve the same function as a crucifix on an altar or a saint statue or stained glass windows in a church or a temple or a mosque. Those are the sacred arts, the religious arts that help us to focus and intensify our religious experience. These are not idols. They are used to help focus our religious experience. And in that sense, they're the same as religious arts around the world. And I think that there's been a strong and a long-term misunderstanding of what these objects are. And those that are depicted in them are the devotees, the followers, the men and the women who are followers of Yeshua Ledba. All right, let's move on to others. Here on the left, you're looking at a beaded sheath and sword hilt that is owned by a famous warrior, a powerful military leader in the kingdom of the Owo, Yoruba. It's called Damalore, and it's only possessed by those military leaders who have distinguished themselves and shown and demonstrated their courage and their power by killing an elephant, which is not an easy thing to do. And if you have demonstrated your ashe, and the king will commission a bead artist to make one of these for you, and you get to wear it on special ceremonial occasions. There's a ram's head. The budding head of a ram was seen as and it's turned upside down, but those are the ram's horns and abstracted, but it's a reference to the budding power of rams and their warrior kind of nature. Here they repeat again. But you'll notice that the color that dominates overall is red. And red is one of the colors because it falls into the category of hot colors, of upa colors, hot colors, temperature. But for the Yoruba, temperature connotes temperament. So this is in honor of Ogun, the god of iron, the god of war, and also the god of technology. So the computer programmers are devotees of Ogun, and truck drivers and taxi drivers and so on. So he's the god of technology, but he is the god of war, and he's associated with blood, the flowing of blood, and of heat, of aggression. And so red is one of the colors that dominates in the beadwork for Ogun. And then we have a different contrast at the other end of the scale. We have the colors of coolness. White, funfun, is for the Yoruba the supreme color of coolness, of calmness, of composure, of collectedness of mind, of patience, of wisdom. All of those ideas are associated with the temperature and the temperament of that color of funfun. And what you're looking at on the right is the anniversary altar of my friend and brother and co-curator John Mason, who is a son of Obatala, who is the god of whiteness, the god of coolness, god of wisdom. Now John certainly is a wise individual. I know very few who are wiser than he. But sometimes he gets hot, so I often wonder if he hasn't got another Orisha working in there too. But that's John's altar from the Yoruba diaspora. Two different, strikingly different color combinations and presentations to evoke the personalities, the characters of two very different kinds of divinities. Oh, there's another Obatala crown. So I meant actually to show these two side by side. Here on the left, you're looking at a crown from Yoruba land. It might have been used by a king or a queen, but also in certain parts of Yoruba land, beaded crowns like these are made for priests and priestesses of the gods. So if that's what it is, that's how it was used, then it's for Obatala or Orishala, another name for the same spiritual entity, essentially. Okay. Now, we come to another divinity, Shango. Shango, the god of thunder and of lightning. Shango is the deified king of Oyo, which became more than a kingdom, it became an empire in the 16th and the 17th and most of the 18th century. And Shango was one of the early kings of that realm, and he was a warrior king. So he was renowned for his volatile personality, and so he's associated with the storm and with violent, quick action. And so his colors are red and white. This is the Shango priest here on the far left, actually. This is, I think, a priest for Ogun. Although he shares the same color combinations, he actually has a sword here. So I think he's Ogun, a priest of Ogun. This man is a priest of Shango. And he has a beaded, double-bladed dance wand here, known as Oshe Shango. Here it's been beaded. You can see the double shape of it. It's more a butterfly shape. And here you can see on the right a female devotee of Shango with a carved wooden double-bladed axe. This is the key symbol of Shango. It's a ritual item, and many of them are beaded as this one is. And when it's not being used in a ceremony, it's used to decorate an altar. It's placed back on the altar to decorate the altar for Shango. Red and white. Red for the heat and the violent, quick action of Shango, and whiteness because he was also renowned as a ruler who was very concerned about justice and about right decisions and justice being done within his realm. And so whiteness, the cool associated with wisdom, and more, as John explains, as moral righteousness, ethical righteousness is associated with that color white. So Shango balances those two. You might say that he is he's got a split personality. And you want to be sure that you're on the right side of that split personality and not the wrong side of it. So red and white are the colors for Shango. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I did not invoke Eshu Alegba quite enough. Eshu Alaketu Mojubai Eshu. Well, while that's being turned right side up, let me just talk to you about what you see on the right, because we have Shango in the New World. Well, both of these are not in the Americas. This is a Shango altar in Madruga, Cuba, photographed by John, where you can see that red and white that dominates and creates the whole installation, the whole environmental space is red and white, as it is here. On the throne day of a woman who is becoming an initiate to Shango. She wears a beaded and cowried crown, red and white dominating, this multi-strand necklace, and in her hand she cradles like a baby a carved Oshe Shango, or Shango dance wand. The realm of the hunter, Oshosi, who is said to be the younger brother of Ogun, because they're dealing with hunting and seeking out, not as warriors now, but as hunters. And this is a wonderful hat by the bead artist Manny Vega, who will be coming to do a bead residency here. He lives in New York City. He's Puerto Rican descent, but he did his initiation in Yoruba religion in Brazil. And in fact, this bandit that you see here on the right celebrates the ritual house that he was an initiate in, and his Mai de Santo, his mother in the Orisha, who is pictured there in the middle of the banner. It's a wonderful piece, both of these wonderful pieces, and you'll see them in the exhibition. Oshosi dwells in the realm of the forest, and so blues and greens, especially greens and turquoise are the colors, and his altar that you'll see in the exhibition has camouflage cloth on it. When you go near that place, you go into the forest, you go into the woods, and that's just what it is meant to evoke, the realm of Oshosi. All right, now the next category of objects are those that are associated with royalty. Here we have two Yoruba kings wearing their beaded crowns with veils during important annual royal rites. And the oldest of the crowns are conical in shape. They have a beaded veil that usually covers their faces, but he's using sunglasses instead. This guy is a very hip king, you know. He's got his shades on, but he has to protect his eyes in one way or another, either by the veil or by sunglasses. I mean, this is not just a fashion statement. It's more than that. And here you can see now another traditional crown with a beaded veil. covering the face of this king during his annual rites of purification and renewal. And you're going to see in the exhibition a whole kind of recreated throne room. And I'm showing you some of the objects, but I wanted you to see some of the kings and how these crowns are worn. They have the beaded veil, frontal face, and also multiple faces usually, sometimes 16 beaded faces, and these are often said to be a reference to the royal ancestors who are there helping the present ruler see his way through the world, him or her, because there are kings and queens in the Yoruba world. And then there are birds, piling of birds, and a bird crowning the very top of these beaded crowns. And those birds are the key symbol of the mystical powers of women. Those women are regarded as possessing a very special ashe. You know, it's that ashe that allows life to come into this world. And when mothers are angry, as some might say, I brought you into this world, I can take you out. So don't get me angry. So those birds are a reference to the spiritual powers of women, and they have to be there on the crown because whether it's a male or a female ruler, they need the support of the women in the community to make things happen in the proper way. A beaded garment on the left, two views of it, front and back, formerly owned by the Deji of Akure, one of the kings of Yoruba land. And not only heads are beaded, but toes as well. So from head to toe, the Yoruba king and queens are covered in beads. They also get to put their bottoms on beads. And here you see a wonderful transformation of this. I just love this piece. And you're going to see it in the show. Because they've taken a European chair and they have Yorubanized it. And this is no longer the chair that it was. It has become something else. It has become a throne, a beaded throne, with lots of kind of floral patterns and the faces of the royal ancestors protecting back and legs and arms and hands that do the work. And those floral patterns are references to the leaves, the healing leaves and roots and herbs that protect us all. Then we come to other people. Well, final royal object there on the right, a beaded bottle. Probably would have held gin or high-priced whiskey, which a king would offer to his guests. It would be an item that would be kept in the reception room where he would offer it to honored guests who come to the palace. Now we're in the realm of diviners, and Chief Agbemi Ajanaku, who was the chief Ifa priest, divination priest in Lagos, a wonderful, wonderful man. This was during his annual festival back in 1978, I think it was, where he wears this beaded sash over his shoulders and this multi-stranded necklace. Now look at those colors. Those colors are yellow and green. And those yellow and green beads are said to fall into the third of the three categories of color according to Yoruba color scheme, and that is the category dudu, or dark, cool, warm colors. The dudu colors are the mediating colors between the extremes of coolness, cool whiteness, and hot redness. And these are the colors that are in between and that can move between warmth and coolness. And diviners are mediators. They've got to move between this world and the next world. They're helping the communication happen across that threshold in the cosmos. And so they wear colors that are said to be supremely colors of mediation. Chief Ajanaku. No longer with us. He's on the other side, although knowing his ashe, I'm sure it's been reborn in one of his descendants. Here is a good friend still with us in this world, alive and well, Kolawole Oshitala and two of his sons, another very well-known diviner in Ijebu land, and he wears another item that's an important regalia item. You'll see examples of these necklaces that are worn by diviners to show us their prestige, their wisdom, their power. Divination is something that comes to the Americas as well, and you're looking at a divination priestess here on the left from Bahia, Brazil, and on the right, a Yoruba divination tray carved in wood on the right. So that's the African one on the right, the Bahian one here on the left. They don't use carved wooden trays in Brazil, in the Yoruba community in Brazil, but what they do is they take a circle of beads, beads that refer to all of the Orisha, the different combinations of colors and numbers that refer to the Orisha. So essentially what she's saying is, come to this divination session, all you spiritual forces. Be here, listen to me, reveal what it is you want us to know. And she uses cowrie shells in the system of 16 cowrie divination. A wonderful work by Jose Rodriguez, a man of Cuban descent, Cuban-American, who worked and lived in New York, but now lives in Okinawa. And here he's done a wonderful support and decoration for a divination tray in the Americas, usually woven, as you see it here. And all around the perimeter of this, you could say that this is like that cosmos chart that I showed you. Each of these is a reference to a house of force, a house of spiritual presence. All of those forces that affect what happens and what is revealed to us here on the surface of the divination tray. Another kind of mediator, now the mask mediators. And these are egungun masqueraders in honor of our departed ancestors. Because for the Yoruba, as for most African people, ancestors are not dead, they are just simply departed. They've gone on a journey, but we can still talk with them, communicate with them, we can still seek their guidance and support, and Yorubas materialize them, visualize them in these elaborate masking performances. These cloth and cowrie bead and carved wooden headdress ensembles are the communal work of families, of lineages. These are collaborative works of art that involve men and women in families to celebrate those departed ancestors, to show them and demonstrate to those ancestors that they remember them, they love them, and they cherish them. And you'll see at least 2 ensembles from Africa in the exhibit and 2 from Brazil. I'm going to show you some from Brazil. And there's a video in the exhibit that shows you them in performance, so I'm not going to show that to you now. You can see that up in the exhibition area. Another wonderful egungun ensemble. And this one must have royal associations. It must be coming from a royal family because of the beaded veil. And here are 2 examples of egungun ensembles from Brazil. Because when Yoruba people, from the end of the 18th century, were taken against their will, this was during a period of extensive, endemic warfare in Yoruba land, and people were being displaced from their homes and captured. And as war captives, they were taken down to the coast and sold to European slave traders, carried to the Americas, and where they went in large numbers to Cuba and Brazil. Probably the largest concentrations of Yorubas to those 2 countries, and that's why Cuban influence is very strong in the beading traditions that you see in this exhibition, but to Brazil as well. And one of the first things they recreated, one of the first things they reestablished when they came to this unknown land was to create societies to honor the mothers and the fathers that they were forced to leave behind. And in the final section of the exhibition, actually it's at the end of the Americas section, is a section of bead artists, Yoruba bead artists, who are taking beading into wider realms. And here you're looking at a bead panel called People of the Universe, and a detail on the right. This is by Jimo Baraimo, and there are 2 of his works in the exhibition. I would have also liked to have shown you 2 works by Olabayo Olani, who is here with us this afternoon, but I couldn't locate him in time. So you have the living beater, here with us, and you saw him working on a piece yesterday. And in fact, I forgot to thank him publicly. This wonderful hat that I'm wearing today, probably the first time most of you have ever seen me wear a hat, is a gift from Olabayo, for which I thank him. So this is Jimo Baraimo's bead work. It was a piece that he was commissioned to do for Winston-Salem State University, where he did a residency. And this is a bead panel that hangs over the main entrance to a dormitory for international students. And he said, I want to create an image that represents all of the people who are going to come through this doorway. Strangers when they walk in, and hopefully friends when they walk out. And here's one of his bead panels, where he's taken the ancient beading traditions and now making bead paintings on wooden panel and on canvas and so on, sometimes combining it with acrylic. And you'll see two of Jimo Baramo's early works in the exhibition. Okay. Well, I guess I've come to the end of my talk. I have one closing remark for you. If I can find it here. I know what it's about, but let me just remind myself. Yeah. All right. My friend and Yoruba colleague, Olabi Yai, says that the Yoruba have always considered themselves a diaspora. That is, people on the move. And that artists in Yoruba culture are called are I don't know if I have the tones right. Yetunde, correct me. Itinerant individuals. Are itinerant people. Artists are said to be itinerant persons who are strangers everywhere and at home nowhere, engaged in constant departures of creativity. And I think as you look at this beaded work from the past and the present, you will agree that they are engaged in constant creativity and inventiveness. Thanks very much. We're going to move to John's presentation. And I have to remind myself to keep this introduction brief, you know, because I can go on a long time about John, too. Before you is the original Odd Couple. And I'm sure people have wondered how the hell we ever got together. But we did, no more than 15 years ago. And as I like to tell John, it was love at first sight. John is probably the foremost scholar of the Yoruba traditions in the Americas. He especially knows the whole history and development of Yoruba cultural practice and religious practice in the New York metropolitan area, because that's where he's from. He grew up in East Harlem and now lives in my hometown of Brooklyn, New York, the center of my universe. Okay, all right. And besides being a foremost scholar, John is himself a priest of Obatala. He is a diviner. He is regarded as one of the most important elders in the Yoruba community. And now that you know the importance of elders, you know how he's regarded. But in addition to all of that, he is a fine photographer and working on a project under a Guggenheim grant, which documents the memorial of departed kids in urban neighborhoods, murals that have sprung up in Latino and African American and other neighborhoods. He's also a poet and a writer, and he doesn't have to submit his manuscripts to anybody else. He publishes his own books. And in fact, he's brought, I might as well say this now, he's brought some copies of his books and for sale, and if any of you would like to get his autograph and would like to sell them, you can. And I also have a few copies, 3 copies I think, of the Beats, Body and Soul exhibition, which I'm willing to sell. Because the museum shop has sold out. In the first weekend of the show, they have sold out. So anyway, I'm very pleased. Of course, I'm very pleased. We don't see any of that profit, but what we want you to profit from are the ideas that we try to put in that book. So we hope that we'll be able to get a new supply soon. So John is a brother, definitely a brother. I said at the opening, from the same mother and the same father, but probably from another lifetime, a different lifetime. But we are brothers here in this world at this moment, and I couldn't be more pleased to welcome them here to Madison. Let's give them a warm welcome.
I always tell people that my wife likes Henry better than she likes me. without getting emotionally crazy, I love him and I love him. We're going to begin and sort of step off left into another land. I was thinking when Henry and I were discussing coming here, how would I, being a musician and a composer, I hate repeating myself. And I guess that's what helps me to write and constantly go forward, trying to find new things to discover in the world of not just Orisha, but in the world in general. And for that purpose, I thought, well, you know, there's a margin, there's an area that we, even in Henry's discussion, and in Balabayos talk yesterday, the idea of hunters, herbalists, and grumps. And the word grumps is appropriate in this context because there are certain areas that are dangerous for us to take lightly. There are boundary lines, so that when you see palm fronds strung across a doorway or across a path, no matter where you are in the Yoruba world, whether you're in Bahia or in Matanzas, Cuba, or in Lagos, Eko, or Ijebu-Ode, or wherever you are in the Yoruba constructed world, you know that that's a signal to tell you, Ewu, danger. Ewu, danger. That there's something here that needs to be considered. That if you are a person who has what they call boom, that you are not just, you are cautious, there's a sense of intelligence. That an intelligent person then is a person who is then thoughtful, careful, not rash, and considerate. You are considering your movements. Well, there are certain times, those Orisha, those forces that we will, I think, turn this over now, look at, and we say, well, what are beads, and where are their beads? What are the beads that they use? What beads let us know that there is danger, that we must use caution, that we must be thoughtful, we must be intelligent, that if there's a word that says toye, that we must move with measure. We have to think before you act. Well, I took because see, the use of beads, I think Henry pointed out very well, that we're taking metaphoric leaps in many cases. The metaphor starts with that animal far over there, Ekun, the leopard, that signal, that sign that if you encounter a leopard, you see its eyes, you see those little glowing coals in the night. You don't see its coat of beaded vestments. It is the king of cats. It's the king of all. It's the top of the food chain, and we have to keep that thought in mind. Top of the food chain, because we're going to encounter in these categories people and those of us who understand and must respect those people who deal with the top of the food chain, or those elements which control the top of the food chain. So here we begin with the leopard with his royal coat spotted with beads. And that coat, there are many Odu which talk about the leopard, and one admonishes the leopard for trying to change its color. It said, well, you know, every time I go out, they shoot at me, the hunters come out with guns and they shoot, and they chase me, and they treat me badly, and they kill me. And he said, well, you should change your coat. But in changing his coat, he met even greater misfortune. And he went to the diviner eventually, and the diviner said, you know, the coat that you wear is your badge of honor. It's the thing that lets all other animals and man know that they must respect you. It's like the king wearing a veiled crown. That coat that leopard wears is his veiled crown. It's his coat. It's the same coat of beaded splendor that a king wears. So this is where our metaphor begins. But it's also a signal that no fool would walk through the forest tiptoeing. That's why hunters wear bells. They sing songs. They go in group. They go so that they make noise as they tramp through the woods. Why? So that they will let the leopard know. Please, could you move aside? I would like to pass. Well, how do hunters then take that information? Because when we look, even in Henry's picture of the two, of the Shongo priest and the Ogun priest, with the beautiful beaded hat and crown, the Ogun priest, other than that, he had no shade. His cutlass was empty, was naked. It was just a naked blade. A razor, how do you put a bead on a razor? How do you put a bead on a bullet? Its very power and majesty tells you that it needs no beads, but you must respect it as though it were wearing beads. Well, for hunters then, they wear hats that tell you, you see this hat? This hat came from that animal. So that when a priest is initiated, you find that skin, you find leopard. This is from the turn of the century in Cuba, that this leopard skin hat is a hunter's hat. So that if you were going to initiate a priest of Ogun or a priest of Oshosi, they would definitely be, a hat would be fashioned from the very hide. Because even though you say, well, where are the beads? Well, for a Yoruba, we know that that hat is as valuable and as beaded an item as anything you're going to see in the exhibition. We have to reconsider how beads come to be what they are. How do they come to have value? So, the hunter wears his beaded cap, even though for the uninitiated, you see no beads. Hunters, but the beads that we see, again, are skimpy in relation to what is important for the hunter. A friend of mine, you will see Jim Norman's crown, or Shun crown, and fan in the exhibition. He is a priest of Ogun. You will see a part of his work at his shrine exhibited later. But he said to me, you know, and he's a very elegant man. He collects antique watches and he collects antique pipes and he's a very cultured man. And he said, you know, when I'm working, I don't want to, I want to work. And when I work, I sweat and I stink and I can't be talked to. He said, but now when I start working, I want to take my bath. I want to get dressed. He's an impeccable dresser. He likes fine brandy. He smokes fine Cuban cigars. Can I say that here? Yeah. I don't want the government. But he has this cultured sense. But there's this marked difference between when he's working and when he's at ease. There's an elegance of ease, and there's the toil and dirt of work that he. So that here, when you look at shrines, and see, this is where I go back from when you go to a shrine for Ogun, you don't see all those fine beads. You see here, hopefully, here you see some beads. Here, Oshosi, you see beads. But more importantly, you see the horns of that sacred antelope, that sacred deer, that animal, that agun that's going to be brought down to feed the community. Because what is a hunter's job but to provide for the community, to provide that protein and nutrient-rich store of goods that lives out, I'll speak unfortunately, lives out in the forest. So that beads, even though we see them, even though we see the fruit strung like beads, this hunter's fruit, this canepe they call it in Cuba and in the Caribbean, canepe. But this idea, these succulent fruit, they grow on vines in the forest. This is the hunter's bead because it's a simple fruit. It's a fruit that can be pulled off a vine as you move along with your hunt. So that beads here, royal, but more importantly, we know that this is not someone to play with. Why? Because he has the ability to take you away. He kills things in order that others may survive and live. Even here, if I can move aside, here we have Ogun. Here we have a shrine for Ogun. But all of this iron, all of this metal, Oshosi and Ogun living together. But where do we find these? Here. He said, remember, my job is to hunt, my job is to provide, my job is to bring medicine back to you. But don't ever forget that I wear a crown of beads. The beads are my prerogative. Oshosi, we call him finery. That his name, when we look at the oriki for him, he is said to have been given a gown of beads by Obatala, who he served. That he was given a gown of beads by Obatala, that when you are at rest, when you are taking your ease, people will respect you. Why? Because they will see that you are dressed in finery. That your name will mean finery. That this idea of dressing up, of being resplendent, that hunters at ease are resplendent, they're beautiful, they're dressed. But hunters, when they work, remind us that there is the danger, that you cannot just approach them. So that they don't have to put on beads like the king has a veil, like the king had the dark glasses. Their very presence, their very demeanor requires a little diligence, a little thoughtfulness. And that the fact that their beads here are diminished is interesting because we have to see that they're up in the shrine area, when they're working. Do kings wear beads when they're digging holes to plant trees? And what type of beads do we find for Ogun? Well, they're glass beads, but we also have hearing that we have this idea of iron, that iron strung upon string, strung, and then the little beads. What are the beads of Ogun? Ogun's beads are his tools. The tools that he has worn, he has used so diligently that he has worn them down to miniature, that a hammer that used to be this big is now this small. And to show you that he is tireless in his ability to work, he then strings them here. He says, look, here's my hammer, here's my axe. He has miniaturized them to show you that I work until I work the tool into nothingness. That what used to be a hammer is now a needle. What used to be a hammer this big is now that small. What used to be a machete so long is now only an inch high. And I wear it on my chain, my necklace of chain. That my bead is iron. That, yeah, I will wear glass beads. You saw them exhibited in the previous slides. But what is his true bead? My true bead is iron. And what does iron tell you then? A man who wears iron around his neck is a man to be worried about. Because in the Yoruba mind, there's a twist there. When you put iron around your neck, all right, it's like when you see a man who collects iron, what they call alakisa, a person who has no home, who is living out in ragged. It's different to be dressed in rags. That's a benign lunacy. But if you're dressed in iron, that's a dangerous lunacy. It's a dangerous lunacy. It's a sign that it's like somebody walking around sharpening a razor, about talking to themselves, you call the police right away. Somebody walking around reading the paper or talking about the stock quotes, and they say, well, poor thing, they lost it. But the person sharpening the razor, and now, with all the horror of Columbine and other areas, kids can't even play with guns anymore. Because now we understand that those signs, and that's exactly what for the Yoruba the same way, that this is not just something to be taken lightly. That hunters who use guns and weapons and fashion the tools of destruction and transformation, because just chopping down a tree is an act of destruction. I hate to say that. I'm a gardener. I demand that ficus grow there. That means that tree has to go, right? Don't we do this all the time? So there's an idea, but so that these iron chains tell us, hey, toye, be careful with this one. Those beads are beads that tell you more than any bead will tell you. They're not just pretty, they're dangerous beads. And how does a bead then get so big that when a person even receives Orisha, these hunters, that their bead is commemorated in a plate, our Orisha, that we make a plate for the Orisha and paste it and put it on the wall and say, hey, you know so-and-so received Ogun, received Oshosi on this day. This is 1912. This plate was posted in 1912. This is in Matanzas, Cuba. 1912. Why? Because people know this is a different person. This person has received information which now we must consider him armed and dangerous. That they must be now rethought. Eldership is an act of being dangerous. I told my son, I have 3 sons, different sizes. I told my middle son, who was a very strong man, one day he rang my bell incessantly, and when I went to the door, he sort of did it to get on my nerves. And I went to the door, I closed the inside door of the house, and I went and opened up the outside door. And I said, son, if you ever come to my house and do that, I'm going to knock you down these steps. And he began to say, but, and he looked in my face, and the genius of the boy just sprang up. The genius, because he understood at that moment that he was getting ready to bounce down and fight around some steps. But he was a genius, and he said, I'm sorry, Dad, it won't happen again. And we hugged, we came in, had a wonderful visit. That's it, it never happened. Because in age, we say old people are more dangerous than young people, at least in our culture. You never want an old person to raise their voice to you or curse you or to cry about you, because then God is listening. Well, Ogun and these hunters are like that. They require that type of careful respect, that their beads, even though we don't see them all the time, so where the hell are the beads? You guys are talking about beads. But where are the beads? Well, they're beads. They're iron beads. They're beads. They're tool beads. They're beads of crockery that have been enlarged so everybody can see it. And it's one bead. It doesn't have to be 1,000. There's one bead placed on a wall of beads to remind us. He's a memorial bead to let us know, hey, we cannot take this thing for granted. And how do we know? Because here we have a hunter, and we know why, because Zogun, Caribe, the famous Brazilian painter, gave us a rendition. He showed us. Here is a head being transformed. Here's a person being transformed. Oshu, Fin. So we have Fin, this decorative dotting. Remember our leopard? He becomes a leopard. It says, Fin okan, winiking dekun, baba dekun, iya dekun, lo nio. It says, today, mother, today, father, become a leopard. That today we have the ability to transform ourselves. One by one, we put these dots. Every time, each dot is like putting a bead, and each bead transforms into something different. Now we have to consider this person differently in the community. There's a difference between the day you walk in and the day you walk out. When you walk out, everybody has to say, well, we have to think of you differently. It's like you see your children and they go away to school. They go away with a bag full of dirty socks and stuff or whatever. clean socks. They come back with dirty socks. And then, but as they get older, you have to respect them in different ways. You have to now realize that they're grown. You know, I have a grown daughter. I have grown sons too, but you know, you get a daughter, she's 28 now, and you look at her and you say, you're talking now like two grown people. And you say, what happened? Where did the initiation, because there was a point of initiation, something transformed her. There was a moment where she was this, she was a little girl, now she's a woman. Well, here's the same thing. These dots, this sacred pointillism, as Henry has so well pointed out, this pointillism here, where, again, this is the feathers of the guinea fowl being replicated, because not only is he feline, but he's bird-like. Hunters can fly. Hunters have what they call egg, they set on a perch. They set on a perch in a tree. They wait for the bird. So that this person now, the beading becomes body beading, that the body art. And he wears the feathers of guinea feathers, the guinea fowl feathers. You see the dotted, because that bird comes with another bird that sports its beads. It says, hey, look, you ever see a guinea fowl? And it's noisy, and it doesn't have to be quiet for anybody. And it's a feisty bird. It's a bird that you don't stick your hand in that coop unless you know what you're doing, because he take a piece of flesh. Many grown men who kill animals are afraid of guinea fowl. I'm telling you the truth. So that here, this is all being stated here. Dots, beads, being restated. Here he wears guinea fowl feathers. He emulates, he replicates guinea fowl feathers here. He replicates this idea that he is both feline and has the ability to fly, that he can take wing, his mind can go up. And this act of decoration, that how do we know? The body artist of the Yoruba, as Henry has so well pointed out in our article, joint article, and his article on body art among the Yoruba, especially as it pertains to a wound, to hunters. Here, this is no purse. This is no fancy metal purse. These are little blades, little beads, if you would think of them in another way. Beads that have been flattened and sharpened. Beads that then are used to initiate young men and women, to circumcise, to identify, to create marks. Ilah to tell us, hey, who are you? Whose family are you? What is your ethnic group? What is your affiliation? Who are you? How do we treat you? Because the minute these beads have been applied and their mark has been left here and here, we have to speak of you and think of you in a different way. Beading has to be rethought. What is beading? This is beading. Here is a wound. And what happens then? Because here we have Jim Norman. That same Jim Norman whose work you see outside in the Oshun section of the New World Art. Here is Jim Norman. And what does he do? He wears a shirt that it's gingham. Gingham, this idea of gingham cloth, but it almost plays on the fact that it's like a beaded shirt because it's dotted. It's gingham design. But if you don't think that that's a bead, and look here, because here he plays on the idea of stringing necklace, but it's cloth. It's cloth on cloth, which approximates bead use, and beads around the neck, beads on the wrist. But here is a wound. Here is a wound. Fruit, knives, and here again. Where are his beads? Well, here, you see beads here. But his beads are chain again. The element is that the true chain, the true eleke of a womb is iron chain. That is his true bead. That is his true necklace. The glass, that's okay. But here we have a priestess of a womb. But she comes from Haiti. And here in Brooklyn, you see her. She brandishes, and again we know, both forests, this is inside a house. Inside a house, you can think you're outdoors. Here, we're outside under his porch. And you would never think, you would think he was somewhere deep in the woods because he has brought in a truckload of fern and completely covered this is a room that's got to be about 8 feet high, 12 feet deep, and 8 feet across. That's completely covered, all ceiling, the whole thing. So that here, we've gone back to the woods. But in this, these beads here, the light doesn't allow us to see it perfectly, but we see all the others adorned, and they come to celebrate Ogun. And how do we know? Because Ogun is here, all about Tala is in the back, but Ogun is here in the center with all of his tools at rest, covered in palm oil, so that they are eased, they're at ease. They're not hot, they've been cleaned, they're cool, no blood, no heat. This is Ogun celebrating. He says, hey, and we put fruit, fresh fruit to cool him, to keep him cool. But here, we have a little bit of Haitian. You see the bowler hat? That's the Haitian affectation here. We have a little, going back to the Baran, Samedi, to Ogun, in Haiti. But here, we have Yoruba and Haiti all coming together. The Asson of the Haitian Mambo. But we know, how do we know this is Ogun? Because here, you see that? Maribu. He said Maribu, yeah, Maribu. He said that the sound of Maribu. The sound, the movement. And Ogun makes his own music when he shakes, when he dances, you hear the palm. So the song tells you this. So here we have she wears beads, but she also wears mariwo. That mariwo and beads and cowries all let us know that here is Ogun. But Ogun transforms. Ogun that we must be careful with. Why? Because she brandishes the items, the things that let us know that there must be carefulness in the world. Oh boy, it's dark. Oh, Oshosi, we see hunter. We can barely see a bull. But we see, again, because, and maybe Oshosi's playing tricks with us today, like Henry slide on the slide, because we never see a, when you see Oshosi, you're dead. It's like you hear the bullet, you're dead. You hear the arrow, you've already been hit. So that the idea of camouflage, of hiding, it's like when you see those beads, then you know that the bow has been spotted and he's got to do it. So that this idea of low profile is imperative. Yeah, their beads speak, but they speak very quiet. And you have to be very careful when you listen. Here we have Ogun. Now here, again, this is a memorial statue for a priestess of Ogun. How do we know? Because we see her, Ada Ogun, that here is her cutlass. Here are her beads. But here again, Mariwo. So beads, Mariwo, cutlass, all acting as beads, acting as things which are tied to her, that have been laced and threaded to her personality. So that beading is just not a physical property. It's also something which actually identifies the thing. It's almost like you said, boy, it's like, are you wearing something? Why? Because it's almost like it's a part of you. Even these shells, these Congo shells, because this is a Congo now, Congo Yoruba crossover. The idea of those three shells lets you know that this person has gone on. This person is in the land of water. This woman has traveled into water. How do we know? Because the person in whose house this was maintained, he not only was a priest of Eshu, and one of the oldest priests of Eshu in Matanzas at the time, but he was also a very highly placed Tata Nganga in the Congo tradition, because his mother was Congo, but his father was Yoru. So that he maintained both traditions. So that in a shrine for one of his friends who was a priestess of Ogun, what does he do? How do we know that they're beads? Because they're even Congo beads. Got the wrong point. We got the Congo beads, because we know that these are beads of a different ilk. They're beads that let us know that this is a grave site. It's like seeing those beads that Bob Thompson will tell you about, those beaded grave sites of the Congo Yoruba world that we will see when you will see, I will see too, hopefully I'll be back, when Bob comes, then you will see that connection, that there are beads also, that those beads are speaking as much as any beads you're going to see in this show. And beads for mendicants. How do we know these are beads? Because these are trees. These are trees and birds perch. And who are those birds? Those are Yamin. They're sending those mothers that have to be placated, those powerful ladies, those powerful forces in our world. And what are they protecting? They're protecting children. They're protecting children so that children won't prematurely travel back and forth. Those Egbe members, the society of children, that those children won't go back and forth. No, they will stay. They will be held to this world. But how do you do that? How do you keep them from traveling up and down along this axis, back between worlds? No, how do? We get the mothers to stand guard, one, and we use leaves. We use leaves. So this is not only bramble, it's also leaves. And remember, Osang, it says that Osang is the owner of leaves. That you cannot have the owner of leaves, but then leaves are beads. Osang is not only the owner of leaves in medicine, but he's the owner of beads. So that if you want to have beads, if you want to consecrate beads, you must have sacred herbs. You must make omiro. You must have sacred ewe. So that all of this is connected. But again, where do we see beads? Oh, the beads are right here. That's a bead. 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 All these are beads, but they're iron beads. They're the most important bead of all. Those are the beads of medicine. They pun on the words Ogun, 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 Ogun. So that this punning that the Yoruba play, that when you see that Opa standing there, Opa son standing there, it's a pun. It's a metaphoric statement. It's letting you know, hey, be careful. Why? Because this is a beaded personality, a person who owns beads, who has the prerogative, and that prerogative makes them dangerous but also useful. Why? Because we need to protect our children. We need to protect our health in their life. To have health. Most important of all things, if you're not healthy, you're in trouble. Oh, I want I think I turned you around. Okay. All right. Yeah, there we go. Next one here, please. Next one. Okay, hopefully I'm going the right way. Okay, nope. Nope. One more. There we are. Medicine. How do we know beads? We're playing metaphors of beads, beads, and beads. Here we are at Matanzas again. And here we go. The last thing we saw was those trees with iron leaves. Leaves that represent medicine with leaves that represent beads. Well, how do we know? Well, here we have beads, but foil beads. And they've been strung so closely together that you can't really tell, because he said, well, I don't have any beads to put here. What I'll do, I'll take foil. And I'll give you this idea of a textured surface. And I'll make this a beaded surface. And I have little boards here. How do we know? Because down here, with all of this medicine and this fabric, and here we have Osang. That here is the Osang. Here is where Ebogo, here's where sacrifice is made. But this is where the beads. All right, here. The metaphor: birds, trees, and the cocoa, and beads. Beads, feathers, again coming up, and beads, and power, and light moving. This idea of shimmering light and power, ashe. How do you represent ashe? How do you represent a lightning bolt of beads? Well, here, he takes foil. And you'll see this, Bob should be here to show this slide. Talk about African American retentions and moving forward, that you see how foil is used in the South. So again, do that same shimmering effect, the effect of reflective power. Well, that's what beads are. So here, and how do we know that this is all about beads? Because that's Osang in there. That's Osang in there. So the connection, the metaphor, and for the average person coming to the house saying, Oh, you have such a wonderful house. What is this? What have you done with aluminum foil? Does Alcoa know what you're doing? And we carry the metaphor further. From the very obscure to the blatantly visible. So here, now, you want to see bees? Go to Pongo Real. Go to Pongo Real Botanica on between 111 and 110 Lexington Avenue in Harlem. And ask my old partner, can you take a picture of this and put it on the door? Well, right, he does have his privileges. This is a sign. Yeah, you want to know where medicine power is kept? If you want to have a business, that your business is selling herbs, selling medicine, you must have this. You must have a pact with that powerful person, with that powerful reality, which is Osang. If you don't make Osang your friend and your partner, you cannot do business with medicine, because then medicine will become your enemy. So that he had to make peace with Osang. He had to make peace. He had to become a brother in the Egbe Osang. They call it Osanista. They call it Olosang. He's Olosang. He's the owner of that secret. He's a fraternity member of that society of Egbe Omosang. Why? Because he wants to deal with medicine. He wants to make profit from medicine, from telling you, well, if you take this and you boil that and you add this and you put this and you do that, this will cure diabetes. This will cure jaundice. This will cure hypertension. This will cure this, that. That you cannot intervene in the world of God without having some kind of bad membership. This is his badge. And it's a badge decorated with beads, calories for money, and the idea here, instead of a multicolored beading, which we can often associate with Osang, we see here this doll, because what is the message? If you don't have this, then this might be what happens to you for being so arrogant to think that you can traffic and deal in the ills that plague us. Why? He has one eye. He has two. He has one arm. He has one leg. But he wears the coat of many colors. Where do we see these? Here. These are bees. Every color represents a bee. It's like every color represents a leaf. The trees give leaves in all colors. Well, he's wearing a coat of leaves. He's wearing a coat of bees. So the metaphor folds back on itself. And here, the metaphor is sort of this stark, because it says, hey, you mess around, birds will get you. Be careful with birds. That you cannot flaunt. You have to be careful. Toye, because Yami, those, and Ibi, after all those powers that would bring us down are being mediated here, are being held at bay. But remember, life is. These are the colors. Is that stark contrast. This is not some fun game. This is not even hopeful. This is dire business. So that the colors tell you this straight off. It's black and white. Because black and white and red and black and white and black and red. And those color combinations, those high contrast colors, give you the sense of tension being applied here. And we go forward. That is medicine. And what is medicine used for? I know. What is medicine used for? Can we get this a little better here on the side? Medicine is used by this hunter, Orisha Oko, because Orisha Oko, they say, Orisha Oko, that he was like a death wind, that it rises up out of the earth, that he was stricken. He was stricken. Why? Because he wasn't prudent. And he was stricken with disease. He was stricken with that thing, whether we call it smallpox or leprosy, those terrible things of the skin, those viruses. And we meet again, top of the food chain. Now we get into the realm of drunks. that's serious. We say grumps because some names are too strong to say too often. Some things are too virulent to touch. You have to wear plastic gloves. You have to stand behind a curtain or behind a glass. So here, why? Because these things happen to us. And you see those beady eyes? Those eyes have been blasted by adversity. By the things that go wrong. You see the swollen joints. You see the burlap. This is mighty war because this tells you something terrible has gone on. Something terrible has happened here. So that this statue in Matanzas, Cuba, in Havana, Cuba, in Casa de Africa, lets you know that here is Omolu, Babalua here. That there are things which will eat man. Like man eats as a hunter before, there are things that will hunt us out if we're not careful. And when we wear their beads, we must then, we acknowledge those things in the world. So that here we have Orisha Oko and Babalu, who both give us this, who bring this message to us. Why? Because they're grumpy. They're grumpy, why? Because it itches. This is my youngest son. Oh, sorry. Can we go back there? Right.
Zach?
No? This is, okay, hold it. Let's see what that is. There we go. Bingo. This is my youngest son out there, Yemi. And his mother said, "You want to show that picture?" I did. So I took it, didn't I? Why? Because even something we love as much as our children, this is what beads. Because you see that same bead Henry showed you in the beginning? The ping ping? There are other things that will ping ping. There are other forms of initiation in the world. The Yoruba are so brilliant. Many cultures understand that. If there are things that initiate us even when we don't want to. You don't pay to get measles. You don't pay to get, nobody's going to say, listen, can I give you $10 to get measles? Well, unless you're in biological warfare. But the reality is, and that's what this message is about, that those are beads. He's wearing beads, but beads that nobody wants to wear. And in honor of him and surviving, because he's big now, nice. But we then look at, we cover that. The Yoruba are very, be careful. So we don't want to see this. We don't want to see these spots. We don't want to see those raised pieces. We want to see this. This is more acceptable. We want to see, but we understand again, Mighty War, that we want to see that this is Irene Blackwell who did this. Because we want to see those costumes, those design elements that let us know something is brewing here, but will not give us the scare of our lives, which will, of course, make us respectful and make us considerate as we think. For the Yoruba, they dance with wands that let us know. Again, you don't see a profusion of beads. Here, you see a few beads. In the Museum of Natural History, this dance pair for Omolu, you see here, again, this very, very scant remembrance. Again, same point Henry brought out. Look at the areas around the wrist, around the neck, here in the head, because you get crook or you get, ringworm and those things like that, right? And all of this, you don't mark yourself, so here you get around your ankles. So that this idea of, in those vital areas, those areas of action, we have to be protected. That's when beads become important. And you see in Bahia Verger, on the far over here, you see, again, the same statement, but in human dimension. In human dimension. That here, we cover that face. Not because the face has been disfigured by that top of the food chain virus killer, but because we respect it. And beads are a way of showing that we respect it. Cowries transform into and become pustules. Here, we wear necklaces, we wear that show beads, cowries, which emulate the pustules. That here we're talking And again, the idea of silence and not calling their name because they're not, it's like you ever had the itch? It's not a nice thing. You don't want to be black. What the hell you want? You want some of this? No, you don't want any of this. So that here again, the Yoruba uses brilliance, coolness for Omoru, blue for Nanaburuku, the mother. So that here we have her color, here we have the color for the sun. And again, this idea of, you see the little brass with the copper that's used in their traditional. And what do you have here? Milagros. You go to Cuba, you see milagros. Why? Because, little things, if you could put a little thing that says, hey, I'm on your side. I said a prayer. I did the thing. I went and said the mass. Whatever. This is the Catholic Church in across the bay in Regla. This is the beginning of oh boy. This is the church for Yamosha. Beginning of Regla in Regla. So that here, with these little devotional things, these little milagros, these little prayers, these little that you would attach to your rosary or put to a chain and keep them in your pocket. And well, this is for Christians, not Christians. But the Yoruba have said, hey, that's a good idea. Let's make up, these are beads. You see this, you see the little hole? They're beads. They're beads, crutches, eyes, babies, different parts, arms, legs. Whatever needs to be healed, whatever prayer needs to be sent up. Well, here, this is a maso for Omulu, Babaluaye, but it's the same idea. Father, whatever you do, please don't make me afraid. Give me the ability to move. Give me this bingo. These prayers go up. Beaded prayers. Beaded prayers, but prayers that are very quiet. Because the seed's covered in cloth. You see beads, you don't see much more. You don't want to see the face of that thing under there. You see its emissaries here. You see the signs that just like that palm frond, it says, hey, this is not a place to play, children. Don't come here. So beads let you know, remember, there's sickness and there's disease in the world. Things that make us look funny. Things that make our skin erupt. Hey, here, it's so interesting that in this shrine in Elvehjem, a very famous priest, his shrine was so that here we have this herb kept in a jar, in a vase, but you can barely see the face. But you see the body from Cookie Dollar? All the way down where the feet have no feet. The feet have wasted away. This is the most extreme sense because it says, hey, their beads speak, but some beads really don't need to be seen. They're beads and then they're beads. And then there are ways in which we let us know that the entire ensemble, the entire situation lets us know, hey, look at these beads. You see the Christian version, the Christian lets you know, oh, St. Lazarus, yeah, look at him. He had leprosy and all kinds of stuff. But here, the Yorubas say no. Cover him up. Put a hat on the campesino. This is the person who lives in the country farmer, which I say. So he wears this native straw hat. But you see in Yoruba land, the ate, that's worn. But beaded gown, that he's covered now. So we don't see mighty wool, but we see this cool color, red and white. Those two colors that say, but we want more vanilla, we want more, we want to be more merciful now. Because the white, look, he suffered so. Look at the face, withered and gone. Here, again, red and calico, because in Odu, we say, because this made it both. That you don't bury a body in certain kinds of cloth. Because if you do, they come back as a leper. So that here, this is going back to Odu utterance. And you see feathers of birds with spots. Bramble, broom-like material, sweeping out sickness and illness. So this metaphor, where are the beads? Right here. Beads, in the sense of this reflective ability, that this whole thing, even the flowers, all of this becomes a beaded panorama. Beads here, obviously. We see beads on the body. We see beads even in the broken crockery. And we're coming down to the last. That here we have beads, but beads become cloth. Because, again, we don't want to see him. We cover him in burlap. We cover him in mighty wool. We put his sign with a little beaded insignia here, a little beaded sign, little beads here at the handle, because we don't want to touch those spines now. Beads are mediators. You don't touch the spine, you touch the beads. So, but again, it's covered. It's a body covered. It's a body interred. It's a body wrapped. It's a body, though, that lets us know, like a movie, that here is color. Here is life rejuvenating. Here is life with the possibility of coming back. Why? Because beads have become cloth. Beads and cloth, hair, and then beads again. So that we know, don't touch that vessel. Among the two traditions in Cuba, and that have come to the United States, some are sealed that you can't ever open this. Once it's given to you, it's sealed forever. Others, it can be opened so that certain things can be added or subtracted. But why? This is the very symbol itself. Beads tell you, hot, very hot, very, very hot. That this is like an antenna, like a lightning rod. It's like a stinger. It says, hey, so if you're going to touch it here. Hold it by the handle, the cool handle. Because if you don't want to grab this. This is not the handle. Here is where, this is where we can deal with these forces. This is the thing. This is where medicine has been placed to make sure that this can be handled, this can be dealt with. But this whole vessel, studded with beads that warn us, hey, go here, go here. Thank you.
Program has gone fairly long. I think what we'll do is just maybe take 2 or 3 questions here formally, and then that'll allow people to go up to the gallery to see the exhibition some more if they like. So are there any questions for John or for me? Yes?
John, can you speak about your green hat?
My green hat was made by priests of Yamosha. I'll know what name about to say. My mind is gone. Josephine. And she's a wonderful, she makes wonderful hats. So for years, it's almost like a ritual with us. Whenever I want to buy presents for people, I can't think of anything else, I go to Josephine's house. And she has hats, gold thread, any kind of hat you want. Very expensive hats. And so this is one of her creations, and I thought it just was in a green mood.
Question over here?
Can you talk about the house for
In the Yoruba tradition, and we both talked about the importance of the head, Uri. In the Yoruba tradition, in the past at least, each person would have a small symbol made of their inner head, or Uri Inu, which is the site of their spiritual essence, their personality, their destiny, their character. And that small item would be placed on a domestic altar in the house. And then, if the family or the individual, as they do well in their lives and they can afford it, they'll commission a house of the head to be made. So in the exhibition you'll see the small symbols of a person's spiritual head known as ibori, and that those small symbols made of cowries or beads and leather and other power substances is placed inside the house of the head, which is there to protect it and to celebrate it. Because it's the head that you bring to this world and that you want to reinforce and intensify with ashe, the ashe that you build during your lifetime. John, you want to add anything? Okay. Yes?
Did these people work with these glass beads prior to the Europeans bringing them in?
Yes, we know that the glass beading industry is at least 800 AD in Ife, in Yoruba country. Yorubas have been making beads for millennia, but with the start of European trade in the late 15th and 16th centuries, a lot of the beads were coming from Venice, from the Mediterranean world. Before that, they were probably coming from North Africa and the Nile Valley, and maybe ultimately from the Indus Valley in South Asia. But then they come from Europe, from Venice first, and then beginning in the 18th century, the main center of production for glass beads, and it continues today, is Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic. And the beads in the objects in this exhibition, as well as the beads that you will see in most Native American beadwork in this country, are all beads that were imported from Czechoslovakia. Any other questions? Yes, Ann?
What about the dates of the objects in the exhibition?
A good question. I've been asked that already. The show's only open 2 days, and I'm sure that's an important question. And you would say that since I'm an art historian, or said to be an art historian, where's the history in this show? Why aren't there dates with these objects? Essentially, we couldn't pinpoint the dates well enough because the collection histories are not very extensive for most of the objects, and the vast majority of them are from the Fowler's collection. They came to them by various means. And these glass objects, these beaded objects, are done on cloth, and the older ones are threaded on raffia, the mari wool that we're talking about, which dries out. It's fairly strong for a long time, but it does dry out. So these objects have had to be beaded and rebeaded. And so the very oldest ones are not very much intact and are therefore not collected. So most of the objects in this exhibition are either late 19th century or they are 20th century objects. But they are forms, color combinations, and images and forms that come out of ancient beading traditions that we know about from our archaeological work in Yoruba land.
Yeah, and the American side of this, or the Americas side, much of the work is, I think the oldest piece in the show might be, oh boy, James Norman's Oshun crown, which I have been noticing for maybe 15 years, something in that range. And I always, you know, sometimes you know somebody personally, and you think it's in a position to say, listen, you mind if I come in and take a picture of your bathroom? That commode, I just can't get enough of it. So, yeah, you know, so that the idea, and a lot of times you can't presume because of what I do as you know, chronicling so much material, that everybody's going to be open to it. But that piece is that about the oldest here. The others were commissioned. Many were done within the last, from the actual time of the show's initial inception, which would be 92, when we first began putting this whole thing together. So some of the pieces maybe 85 for the rest would be about the earliest date. So we're talking 15 years really in some cases. And the James Norman crown might be the oldest, might be, it might be 10 years, so maybe 25 years for that. So, and that gives us a different, a kind of strength actually, because we're hoping that there's so much material in Brazil and in the Americas, which is more recent in terms of being manufactured, not in terms of its tradition. And those pieces hopefully will allow us to give, to have more latitude in terms of expositions and things of that nature.
Okay, we'll take one more. I think this will be the last one, and then we'll call the formal part of the program, and we can talk informally outside. Yes?
I just want to thank you for this beautiful thing. You have tried to explain the unexplainable. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the kind of question we like.
Ekabo, I hope you enjoyed those lectures given by myself and John Mason. We are the co-curators of Beads, Body, and Soul, and those lectures were given during the opening weekend celebrations at the end of January. Before we leave you this evening, I want to let you know about some other events that are taking place in the coming days that you may be interested in attending. This Thursday afternoon, February 24th, Professor Sonya Clark is going to be talking about her work and demonstrating her beading techniques. She's giving this as part of the Wisconsin Alliance for Art Education conference that's taking place in Madison this week. And it will happen at 3 o'clock, beginning at 3 o'clock, and going until about 5 o'clock. And it will be taking place in the White Gallery of the Elvehjem Museum of Art. The event is free and open to the public, and we encourage you to come. So hope to see you there. Later that same evening, beginning at 5:30, we have the final night of our African film series. And at 5:30 in room L140 of the Elvehjem Museum of Art, we'll be showing two films. The first is a documentary called Bahia, Africa in the Americas, and it's about the strength and vibrancy of African culture in northeastern Brazil. That lasts about 60 minutes. And then that'll be followed by an informal discussion. And then at 7 o'clock, beginning at 7 o'clock, we will be showing our final feature film, and this one's from the African diaspora. It's entitled Daughters of the Dust, the feature film done by Julie Dash, and talks about African Americans in the Georgia Sea Islands and their relationship to their heritage, their African cultural and artistic heritage. So we hope that you'll come for those two films on Thursday evening. Then on Friday, February 25th, we're going to have some marvelous performances. Clyde Morgan, internationally renowned dancer and choreographer, has auditioned and is now training students and others from the community, and they're going to be putting on a performance of Afro-Brazilian dance on Friday evening, and they're joining forces with some wonderful musicians from Central America who are part of the Sin Fronteiras program currently going on in the public schools. So Clyde Morgan is going to be joining Guillermo Anderson and Tito Medina, as well as students from 3 of the Barrio schools who have been involved in the Sin Fronteiras project. Those performances take place at 7 o'clock and at 9 o'clock in the music hall on Bascom Hill on the campus, just above Park Street. And the admission for students is $5 per person, and for adults, $10 per person. You can get your tickets through the Latin American and Iberian Studies program at UW, or at the door on the evening of the performances. So there are going to be 2 performances this Friday, February 25th, one at 7 o'clock and the second one at 9 o'clock. It is called the Beads and Sin Fronteiras Winter Extravaganza, and we hope that you'll join us for those wonderful performances. Then on Saturday, Sonya Clark will again be presenting and talking about her work beginning at 2:30 in the afternoon. She's going to talk about the work that she's done over the years and the ideas that have inspired her, many of them coming from Yoruba culture. And at about 3 o'clock, she'll move to the White Gallery in the museum and there continue her beading demonstrations until about 5 o'clock. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for these events. I'll be telling you about more in the future that are coming when we have our program next week. But until then, let me say to you, Odabo, goodbye, and until we meet again. Ciao.